I get paid to walk in the woods. That's pretty good in itself, but for me, it's all about getting others engaged. To me, that's the most rewarding thing I do.
For me personally, it's probably the best area I've ever lived in. This is a newer state park, so it's still being discovered by the Indiana citizens and also by surrounding states.
Welcome to In the Parks, an Indiana State Parks podcast. I'm Allison Martin, and I'm excited to tell the stories of these amazing places in the Hoosier State. I think our parks show off the best of Indiana, yet there's so much more to them than you might expect. So it's time to go in-depth, to really know the stories and discover what makes each destination unique and valuable as part of Indiana. On In the Parks, you'll learn about the people, legends, and places that formed Indiana's parks in the past, and who is writing the story now. Today, we're going to Charlestown State Park. Charlestown State Park in Charlestown, Indiana is about 20 minutes from Falls of the Ohio State Park in Louisville, Kentucky. If you want an amazing staycation, plan a weekend of hiking here, fossil discovery at Falls of the Ohio, get dinner in Jeffersonville, and explore southern Indiana and Louisville. I've been to Charlestown twice, and I'm excited to introduce you to Indiana's third largest state park. We have a lot of people to guide us through Charlestown. I'm going to introduce you to all of them now because we'll hear from all of them throughout this entire episode. Let's start with the state park employees. Jake, who's loved parks since he was a teenager, and Jeremy, who loves connecting visitors to the park.
Jacob Shapley. I'm the property manager of Charlestown State Park and Falls of the Ohio State Park. I got interested in state parks probably when I was 14. I went on a people-to-people student ambassador program. We did 1 week in San Francisco, 1 week in Yosemite, and I got hooked there.
My name is Jeremy Bevan. I'm the interpretive naturalist here at Charlestown State Park. For me, it's all about getting others engaged and just getting people interested in nature, creating that spark. To me, that's the most rewarding thing I do, and just trying to create people to care and be stewards for the natural world.
I'm also thrilled I got to interview the mayor of the city of Charlestown. Literally everyone I talked to mentioned her name because she's been a park supporter long before she was mayor. She also shared what makes Charlestown extra unique. And please excuse the recording fuzz. I had some issues with the audio that I didn't realize existed until after I finished my interview with Treva.
So I am Treva Hodges, and I am the mayor of Charlestown, Indiana. It's the only state park in the state of Indiana that has the city's name in it. I think that's special, and so that's one of the reasons why I think that here in this community, the city government itself needs to do whatever we can to support and encourage the growth, development, and preservation of that park.
And finally, here are two awesome women from the Friends of Charlestown State Park volunteer group who also represent two kinds of frequent visitors at the park, hikers and campers.
So I'm Tracy Pop, and I have been, involved with the park for, I don't even know how many years now. It's been so long.
So my name is Jill Duvall, and I am an avid camper.
Our park guides are going to take us through the history and best features of the park and fill in the details about the campground, trails, lots of legends about this property, the Friends group, and the park's future. They also have a new park challenge. Hike all 8 trails in the park for over 16 miles of hiking. And these are no ordinary trails. They take you down and back up the steepest hill I think you'll find anywhere in the state, weave through an abandoned amusement park, past waterfalls, and more. But we'll get to that soon enough. First, let's get into how this property became a park. It's one of Indiana's newer state parks, joining in 1996 along with Fort Harrison. From 1940 to 1992, this was the site of the Indiana Army Ammunition Plant, and it produced ammo from World War II until it was shut down in 1992. In the 1940s, the plant employed 50,000 people, 2/3 of them women. Even today, you can see many of the remnants like the Ranny wells, named for their inventor. They gathered water horizontally to meet the production needs of the plant. You can also still see the railroad track that would have brought materials in and out of the plant, but it's no longer in service. River Ridge was the housing development the military staff and their families lived in. It's still part of the park now, but in a restricted section due to hazards like asbestos and lead in the homes. After the military shut down the ammunition plant in the early 90s, there was a season of uncertainty about the property. Here's Jeremy to share some history. He worked at Falls of the Ohio before starting full-time at Charlestown in 2017.
There was lots of talk happening even before, because it was slowly shutting down. You could kind of see it dwindling. They knew the end was coming. For a lot of people, especially the locals, they saw as a loss of jobs and were looking for an opportunity to bring jobs in. So one of the big pushes for what is now the park today was actually a cardboard factory. And a lot of local people wanted it. A lot of people didn't want it as well. And if you know anything about a cardboard factory, they are not the most pleasant things to be around.
They smell probably?
Very, very, very bad smells, yeah. So eventually some local individuals got together and really, had the idea that this should be a park. Fortunately, they got some of the right representatives on board, and eventually, as part of those federal Lands to Parks projects came on about, this became one of them.
With the property solidly in the state park system, it was time to develop the land. At 19 years old, this park is barely legal. It has developed a lot, and I'm excited to share its features, and later fill you in on how this park will look when it's a full-fledged adult. So here's an overview of what you'll find at Charlestown. There's a boat ramp with access to the Ohio River that was very active when I was at the park in July. There's fishing in the Ohio River and along 14 Mile Creek. And the park also has an extremely popular campsite with 132 electric sites, including 60 full hookups. Even though Jill is local, she still camps at Charlestown a lot, and she was eager to share why it's one of the best campsites she's ever visited.
My husband and I, we were married in 2012, and we bought our first RV, and we camp all over the southeastern United States. We also have a lot of friends that come and visit us that are campers, and so we all choose to stay at Charlestown State Park. So that was my first introduction. The campground is one of the most well-maintained and manicured ones that I've stayed at that isn't a commercially run enterprise. Like the park staff, park leadership do an amazing job of keeping it manicured. When you enter, there's a water fill station right there at the beginning if you're primitive camping. And then there's kind of a Mickey Mouse configuration with ears in the head. And two of the loops have electric, sewer, and water. And then one of the loops, the front loop, is just electric. And then there are sites that are just made for tent camping as well. But all of them are cleared. All of them have like kind of a yard space, so you have privacy. The bathhouses are immaculate. They have the best cleaning team at Charlestown. I mean, like if a cobweb forms, they're like on it immediately. And there's private showers, like with secure doors, and then there's bathroom stalls as well.
There are also camping places for groups to make their own little area. Jill and her camping crew always have a big party for the Kentucky Derby, which honestly sounds like a blast. Plus, camping is a much cheaper way to enjoy race weekend, cheaper than a hotel or Airbnb. Here are her tips for how to camp on Derby weekend, even if you don't own an RV.
When we camp at Derby every year, there are a lot of people who have rented campers and are camping and get out in their Derby finery and go to the Derby because it's 20 minutes away. You know, they have their Ubers come and get them. Everybody knows where we're at. It's an easy location to get to.
Being so close to Louisville would make any weekend fun, whether you're coming for the Derby, the Bourbon Trail, or a nice weekend away. And there are some benefits to camping with friends as opposed to being in a hotel.
I think camping makes people feel like you can be friendlier. Whereas if you're in a hotel, like you just kind of look down and walk by and don't really have a sense of community that you do in a campground.
That's so true. You're more willing to stay up a little later, stay around the fire a little longer, kind of linger and let those conversations build. So if camping sounds like an ideal weekend away, Charlestown is a great spot for it. And if you do camp at the park or need some ideas for where to eat after hiking, Jill also had some recommendations for local places to get food.
There is a restaurant called Copper Kettle. It's right on the square. It's family owned. They've been here forever, and they have amazing breakfast. And then there's also a little coffee shop on the square. They're also family owned, and they have some great coffee. And then the pizza place, Charlestown Pizza Company, if you wanted to have dinner one night, I highly recommend it. They have potato skin pizza that sounds really weird and really decadent. It is fantastic.
Okay, so camping at the park and eating in town are definitely must-dos. The other thing about Charlestown that sets it apart are the trails. Here's property manager Jake Shapley. Before he came to Charlestown, he worked at Prophetstown, a flat prairie. So hiking in southern Indiana is a little different.
We've got a lot of unique trails. Remember, I came from northern Indiana, flatland. Down here we have 200-foot elevation change. Not a lot, but for Indiana, that's pretty good.
That is a lot.
We've got some waterfalls on the trails and stuff that you don't normally see where I grew up. So, of course, I'm drawn to that.
The trails are also what got Mayor Hodges hooked on Charlestown.
I was an avid trail runner when we moved here. I did obstacle courses, and so I loved that it was so close, and so I've run every trail, and then I just got really attached to it.
Treva Hodges is a legit trail runner. She once made up a course she called the Bookends. She parked at Trail 6 on one end of the park and ran that 2.3-mile loop. Then she ran up the main park road to Trail 1, ran Trail 1, which is almost 2.5 miles, then ran back to her car at Trail 6. It ended up being over 10 miles. Tracy Pop also got connected to the park through hiking.
We were hiking, but we weren't like strong hikers then. We were kind of just getting started. Since then, I've really taken up hiking and backpacking. So I've traveled all over the state of Indiana now, trying to hit all the state parks.
It wasn't long afterwards that Tracy found herself joining the Friends volunteer group. And when she says she's into hiking now, she means it. When Tracy visits a park, she tries to hike every trail there. She hasn't been to all the state parks yet, but she's definitely qualified to share what makes Charlestown's trails unique from other parks.
Definitely our hills. So it's one of the main things that people mention to me when they come down here to hike with me is, we're hill climbers. But I think Charlestown's unique because of the hills and our rock structures we have. We have so many beautiful rocks, and you're in the woods and you get to see the rocks laying around, and then in the spring our wildflowers are just absolutely beautiful here. There hasn't been another park in Indiana that I have seen the wildflowers that we have here. It reminds me of out west, when they have the Spring Flower Bloom Fest and all the things that happen out west. To me, it's a large park, but it still feels small.
Tracy and a friend created one of the newest state park challenges, and it takes you past some of her favorite spots in the park. It just started last fall, and they had over 75 people complete it in about 4 months.
So the challenge was something I was very passionate about bringing to the park. So it was something, Charlestown, because we have so many different things on each trail, there was something to find when you go and hike the trails. And you can get, 15 miles by doing all the trails. One of our other board members, Mike, he came up with the idea of the pin instead of a sticker. And the pin has been just taken off, right? People love getting the pin because it's unique. And people like to do something to earn something when you're out there hiking all the time. It's just fun to check another thing off your list.
With over 16 miles of hiking, this is a major challenge, but you don't have to do it all at once. As long as you have the pictures to prove you've hiked all 8 trails and pay $5 for your pin, you're set. There's a link to the challenge in the show notes to get you started. So I've never done a park episode that went trail by trail, but I think you'll see why it works for Charlestown. Let's take on the challenge together right now and hit up Trail 1. Trail 1 is Jake's favorite, and here's why.
You're going to start off on Trail 1 at the parking lot. As you walk, you're descending down by 14 Mile Creek. Well, as you walk down, you're going to get between these boulders. There's a couple of them, I can't remember how many, and you squeeze between them. The trail goes around them, but you walk between them, and it's not nearly as effective as a cave, but you can feel 5 to 6 degree temperature drop because the stones are wet. They're they're colder. You got the moisture in there, and as you look up, you can see the cliff edges up there, and it's neat to see the trees. You don't feel like you're so close to the city. You don't feel like you're in a state park. You're in a different world. That's one of the things I love.
Be sure you get your picture at those rocks. They call it the Big Squeeze. I've done this trail, and it was really beautiful. It's 2.4 miles that provides views of 14 Mile Creek. The flat start was a little deceptive for the hills that came later, but I've heard the wildflowers on this trail are great in the spring. Trail 2 is Jill's second favorite trail, and I did this one as well. As I started it, I saw Jeremy coming back from a creek crawl, a special guided adventure that looked delightfully wet and fun and had me wishing I'd brought a change of clothes so I could have joined in. Trail 2 won't usually get you soaked though. It's about 1.5 miles and not too challenging.
And I'd say my second favorite trail is Trail 2 because it's easy to access, it's pretty easy to hike, and there's a beautiful water feature. I just love that trail. One of the best things, though, about the area is it feels so safe to me. Like when I hike, I can go by myself, I can go with another girlfriend, I can take my dog, and I feel safe.
I appreciated that Jill mentioned how safe she felt in the park. It's nice to have that assurance from someone who's there so regularly. And now it's time for the big dog, Trail 3. Home of the steepest hill in Indiana? Maybe. If you're a Strava user, do I have a challenging segment for you. As you start the trail, you're greeted by a rather intimidating sign. Very steep and strenuous trail. Please do not hike down if you cannot hike back up. You are responsible for your own safety. The trail's 70-foot drop takes you down to beautiful Portersville Bridge, which crosses 14 Mile Creek. Now, thankfully, for guided tours, there's a van ride down the steep paved portion of the trail that brings you back up the hill. And you can also hike the long way around Trail 3 to avoid the hill back up. But come on, the hill is pretty epic, And if you can hike it, you gotta try. At the base of the hill, right before the bridge, you'll see a marker for how high the river got in the 1937 flood, the same one I talked about on the Falls of the Ohio episode. I'm about 5'6", and the marker was still a solid 4 to 5 feet above me. Out on Rose Island, the water was 10 feet deep. I haven't hiked the rest of Trail 3, which is about 2 miles, but the middle part promises that it has scenic views of 14 Mile Creek, and I'm wishing I had finished exploring this one. For the challenge, you have to find the old homestead near the top of the big hill, which should tell you right there that with 2 major hills, this is a tough one. We're going to explore the challenge trails out of numerical order, because once you get to the bottom of the Trail 3 hill, you might as well cross Portersville Bridge and hike Trail 7, the Rose Island Loop, which isn't quite a mile, and it's an easy trail once you get to it. And here's where we can get into some of the lore of the park, because Rose Island is an abandoned amusement park. It's the initial reason I was excited to visit Charlestown. I'd seen pictures of the park, a ghost town, abandoned in the woods. The stone pillars connected by metal arches and the remains of a swimming pool with rusted ladders. Crossing the bridge makes you feel like you're headed back in time. Waiting for you on the other side is a sign with large metal letters welcoming you to Rose Island. Jill said it's her favorite spot.
I would have to say that my favorite trail is the Rose Island Trail. The historical aspects, they're amazing. There's interpretive and educational signage that kind of explains the rich history of the area, and it's just like stepping back in time.
Jeremy gave me the history that starts back in the 1880s.
Rose Island has definitely become quite an attraction, something that we've invested in a good bit. That site was a summer resort opened in the 1880s by a company that actually operated steamboats. The railroad had really started to overtake that business, so they were really just trying to find a way to keep those boats making money. They saw an opportunity that if they could have created a park in a natural setting away from the city, that they could use a boat to take people there, then they could keep those boats making money. So that was the whole reason they created this park. It was basically just a picnic ground along the river. Very much an open mowed, manicured lawn with shade trees scattered around. They did build 3 major structures there during the Fern Grove era, and that was a dance hall, a dining hall, and a small hotel. Pretty popular, at least for the first decade or so, but as it got closer to the 1900s, it had started to, business slowed down a little bit.
In 1905, Fountain Ferry Park opened in Louisville, and it was a true amusement park, so people weren't headed across the river anymore, and Fern Grove went up for sale.
In the early 1920s, a businessman from Louisville buys the park. That man's name was David Rose, and he owned the Standard Printing Company, which printed the Louisville newspaper, the Courier-Journal. So he, understood the power of advertising, understood the power of marketing. He was in that business. So I think he saw an opportunity to really redevelop the park, take it from that simple picnic ground and really turn it into a resort. A lot of people called it an amusement park, but it was a resort. People would come and they would stay. They built cabins. He added the swimming pool, a small roller coaster, carousel. All these things to really make it a place that you would come and you would stay. He opens it in 1923 under the name Rose Island. The island name, though, is a bit of a mystery. It's not an island, but it sounds like an exotic place. It sounds like a destination, maybe a secluded place. Again, it's all about marketing. Once it opened up in 23, it was again the destination. And the boats were full of people coming back, at least for a few years. But then, of course, the stock market crashed.
Rose Island went from having about 135,000 visitors a year to barely making it.
They were pushing through. Mr. Rose kept opening the park every summer, essentially liquidating all of his wealth and finances to keep the park operational. Then 1937, the flood comes along, and that was really the nail in the coffin. At that point, what wasn't washed away was destroyed so far beyond repair, and he had no funding, no finances to fall back on. So he kind of just walks away from it, just abandons the property. And then a couple years later, the U.S. Army comes in and starts purchasing all the land to build the ammo plant, and the property that was Rose Island becomes part of that ammunition plant, which basically seals it off. At that point, this is a military site, and you have at least a generation or two of people from the time that it existed till now that never knew about it, never experienced it, never heard the stories, and in that time, so much of the history was really lost.
After the military took over the land, Anything metal, from the rides to the walkway arches, was drug out, loaded on barges, shipped off, and melted down to make war machines. Everything else was left behind. The Rose Island sign you see when you cross the bridge today is not the real sign or in its original location. The real sign originally spanned 3 stone pillars along the Ohio River, the place where the ferry from Louisville dropped off the visitors. It remains a mystery what happened to the original. It could have been melted down, but there are stories of it being in a storage room at the ammunition plant. If it was there, the sign disappeared and was likely stolen. Honestly, it may be in someone's garage or basement, and who knows if it could turn up one day. Jeremy told me another funny story about some other casual looting that happened before the park took over the property.
There was a story that I'd heard that there was a lady who lived in the area, and this was during wartime. She would come up to Rose Island and take any usable wood. So what boards were left from the cabins or the dance hall, any boards that were salvageable, she would take those boards and load them on a boat and float downstream. And
Stealing them?
Basically, yeah, just taking them and used it to build her own house on the riverbank just down from Charlestown. And I'd heard that story and I thought, well, who knows, right? And then I think it was about 2 or maybe 3 years ago, I had a lady. She said, my grandmother told me that she took wood from Rose Island and built her house. And she's like, have you ever heard that story? And I'm like, yeah, I've definitely heard that story. And I asked her where that house was, and she told me. And I said, I was always told the same story. So either your grandmother did that or she was a good storyteller.
The park staff have had to become very creative storytellers with Rose Island, too. Though the resort was destroyed in the flood, many stone remains and foundations were left behind. Today, the park uses interpretive signs and audio players to help tell the story of Rose Island. It makes it easy to imagine families splashing in the pool, teenagers falling in love, or kids screaming on the roller coaster. I mean, it still looks pretty cool. Like, it feels like you're in a ghost town when you walk through it. And I felt like walking through, like, the signs helped tell the story of it, like, really well. You could really see that the pool had been there, and then, like, these beautiful arches, I'm assuming, were probably lined with rose bushes. And, like, it just would have been so beautiful. It was really, I felt like I could imagine it. It was really cool.
Yeah, that was I think it's a unique site as far as state parks and trails, because it is such a cultural site, but there's so little of it left. That was the big challenge, was how do we tell this story without having all these structures and, hiking in the middle of the woods, and yet there's signs with pictures and text, and we have crank boxes that you literally turn a crank and it plays an MP3 player and has recordings of people telling the stories and things like that. So definitely a unique trail, and I always tell people to hike that trail and read all those signs, listen to all those stories, and then come back on a guided tour because we're going to tell you a whole other chapter of the story. I've been very fortunate in my time here to have met some of the people who had experienced it in real time. So to get firsthand stories and accounts and literally get questions answered from people who had been there really added a lot to it. Like I said, it's a whole other chapter of the story.
One of the other crazy things about Rose Island is seeing the old pictures. Today the place is covered with trees, but when the resort was there, the land was clear and open. I told Tracy how I tried to imagine how it was before.
I do the same thing, Allison. I sit there and I look, and it's amazing how Mother Nature takes back over her land because there are so many trees. And they're big, they're well-established trees. And, there's sections there near the swimming pool, that whole area that when you look at those old pictures, it was bare.
Hiking Trail 7 is really a surreal experience. No matter what time of year you go, you'll be able to get some incredible pictures in this ghost town resort. Don't worry, we'll pick up the pace as we leave Rose Island and head to the next trail on the challenge, Trail 4. I haven't hiked this one yet, but it was one of Tracy's favorites because it's the longest one in the park at almost 3 miles. It also includes a view of 14 Mile Creek from a bluff, goes down along the creek, and in the spring you can see wildflowers in bloom. With a lot of this trail along the creek, the park was having problems with parts of it being washed away. Thankfully, the Friends group has been hard at work restoring it, so it'll be all ready for spring wildflower hikes.
We used the funds from membership and from the community funds that we raised, and also through a couple of grants that we have applied for and received to refurbish an eroded area on Trail 4. And it's actually the first trail in the state of Indiana that's been done this way. They call it armoring. So we put down gravel and then a flagstone base because it was just washing away and it was going to be gone. So that's a big accomplishment for us.
On the challenge hike, look for a grove of cedar trees for your selfie. Next up is Trail 5, which is accessed at the campground. The challenge has you looking for another overlook, but Tracy said there are a few other things you should look for too.
We have an overlook out there that people, don't do Trail 5 very often. And there's actually a CCC marker out there from the old days, so that's actually a little bonus if you find it on the trail.
Trail 5 is only 1.2 miles long, but it's a great one. In fact, it's Mayor Treva Hodges' favorite spot. And before we hear from her, let's hear all the love for Mayor Treva.
Our mayor of Charlestown, Treva, who is, just phenomenal. She was a park supporter before she became mayor.
The mayor of Charlestown, I think she's ran every trail.
So when she tells you her favorite trail to hike, she definitely knows. Here's Treva. Again, please excuse some of the static.
Honestly, I think my favorite trail, if I had to pick one, is Trail 5 over by the campground. There are just some absolutely beautiful views of the creek, just some really beautiful natural areas, and I've seen the most wildlife on that trail.
She told me she's even spotted otters along Trail 6, which I would love to see in the wild. I asked Treva why Charlestown has always held such a special place for her, and I loved her answer.
I would say that the park is a healing place. It certainly was for me. It's a place that in many ways has demonstrated the power of Mother Nature to heal and overcome, because you can see where nature has kind of reclaimed that space, and I think that serves as a wonderful metaphor for people who might be looking for a chance to catch their breath.
Isn't that beautiful? The park is absolutely a place of healing and restoration, and at Charlestown I really felt this, especially when I hiked on our next spot, Trail 6. When Treva told me she ran this trail as part of her bookends route, I was really impressed. The start of Trail 6 was very rocky and steep. Once I got up on the ridge, my friend Susie and I were surrounded by beautiful forest. I could tell that in the spring, winter, and fall, you'd have great views of the Ohio River. We walked along another section that Jeremy told me explodes with wildflowers in the spring.
My favorite time of year is the springtime. So mid-March, I start spring wildflower hikes. In the springtime, the wildflowers here are amazing. It is very typical on a wildflower hike to see identify 20 species in bloom on a single hike. And the next week, there'll be 10 different species. So mid-March all the way up to the end of May, or end of April, 1st of May, we do spring wildflower hikes. And those are one of my favorites.
I was also unexpectedly delighted to be hiking along and come to a sudden stop because I heard the sound of a waterfall. We turned a corner and there it was, a bridge crossing several falls. What a great discovery. I had no idea it was going to be there, and it was such a fun thing to find. That's where the challenge selfie stop is. Eventually, Trail 6 descends to Charlestown Landing, where it's an easy flat walk to complete the 2.3 miles. Finally, the last trail in the challenge is a 5K cross-country course, which is an easy trail for people just getting into hiking. Jill had only positives for this trail, which also sounds very kid-friendly, aside from it being 3.1 miles.
There is a 5K trail that is so well maintained and manicured, and the cross-country teams, local cross-country teams, use it so their coaches go through and pull the routes and stuff. So you can walk and look around and just enjoy nature and not worry about stumbling and falling down.
Don't forget to take your picture at the 2K marker on the trail to complete the challenge. There is one more trail that you may have heard about at Charlestown. It's not open all year, and you can't access it without a naturalist. It's also home to one of the biggest mysteries, arguably in the state, maybe even in the country, and it's called Devil's Backbone. Jeremy explained this trail is only open in the winter because there are a couple rare and endangered plants that grow on Devil's Backbone from spring to fall. So why is a hike to Devil's Backbone so fascinating? Because it's full of lore and legends that could help us discover who really were the first Europeans to come to the Americas. And it may not be Christopher Columbus. It could be the Welsh. Okay, this is a little clickbaity, so I'll let Jeremy explain.
It's the legend of Prince Madoc, or Madoc, or Mad Dog. There's lots of variations of it. A Welsh prince. The story is he came to Americas before Christopher Columbus. For many years they said 1170, and now some of those folks say 970. Over the years, lots of things have been pointed to, connected to it in some form or fashion all over the really the eastern U.S. The story really starts in Alabama. Supposedly, they landed at Mobile Bay, Alabama, and made their way up through into Tennessee to Old Stone Fort, Tennessee, which is a Tennessee State Park, eventually coming to Charlestown to what's known as the Devil's Backbone.
The evidence most people reference are carvings and stones. However, Jeremy said those have been debunked and proved to be forgeries. But there's more evidence that was found in Louisville and on Devil's Backbone.
There was a chest plate, helmet, and shield found in Louisville in the late 1800s. There is a photograph of those pieces, but they were stolen from the person's home, never to be seen again. So the photo is not the best. The general consensus now amongst people who know armor and things, they believe that they were Persian items, which doesn't make any more sense than Welsh as to why they ended up in Louisville at that point. As far as the Devil's Backbone itself here at Charlestown, the big thing that they point to was a geological survey that was done in 1870 by E.T. Cox, who was a geologist for the state of Indiana. And he noted on the backbone that there were stone walls that were man-made, one of them being over 70 feet long, 7 feet high. He noted mounds that appeared to be strategically placed kind of around the perimeter, and a terrace that had been cut all the way around.
So where did all these stones, mounds, and the terrace come from? It could have been Prince Madoc and the Welsh. It could have been someone with a Persian armor. And there are a few other theories out there too.
Every now and then somebody will say Vikings. To me, Vikings seems more plausible. You know, we know they were on this continent. There's plenty of evidence in Canada and things of that that's been seen. But a lot of times it comes back to the fact that there were stone structures, and many people don't believe the Native Americans did that sort of work. But if you study Native Americans in the U.S., there's plenty of evidence that that has happened. In all likelihood, you know, it's very likely that this is a Native American site. We know, you know, all along the Ohio River, when we did archaeological study of Rose Island, when we've done the boat ramp, we found lots of Native American artifacts. So somebody was there. It's interesting, though, because even if you look at the earliest maps of Clark County, late 1800s, that site is labeled Devil's Backbone, ancient fort of the mound builders. But even then, they knew, okay, like this is old, something's happened here, and they kind of left it alone. Nobody farmed it, nobody built on it, but all around it, the land was being used and developed.
So, was it Native Americans building mounds on Devil's Backbone? Or does the evidence point to the Welsh, Persians, or Vikings?
As far as like real concrete physical evidence, there's really nothing out there. It's hard to say. What I always tell people is that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And to say that some Europeans from a relatively small nation that wasn't probably known as the most seafaring nation came to this country hundreds of years before the people we know arrived here is a pretty extraordinary claim. So we need some really good evidence. So could it have been Welsh? Could it have been Native Americans? Who knows?
Now, here's what makes this mystery even better. Or worse?
Today, there's really nothing up there. There's what I believe are a couple of mounds, you know, very loose, low mounds now. But as far as a man-made wall, anything like that, it's all gone. And that kind of adds a whole nother layer to the story, because the reason it's all gone is because not that long after E.T. Cox surveys it, the site gets quarried. And they cut stones. They probably took all the stones that were already cut first, because E.T. Cox said there were these walls there. And then they quarried what they needed to finish the job. All those rocks, all those stones were floated downriver and used to make the pillars that the Big Four walking bridge between Jeffersonville and Louisville stands on today. So that adds a whole nother layer to it, because then you could say, well, you know.
Now you can't prove anything because there's nothing there. With most of the evidence now gone, it's nearly impossible to know who these mound builders were or what they were trying to make. If you want to see for yourself and hear Jeremy share even more, check out the Devil's Backbone hikes coming up. They're limited to 12 people, but the good news is there are hikes happening every Friday and Saturday in February. The last Devil's Backbone hike for now is Saturday, March 1st, so visit the link in the show notes to sign up right away. The new challenge at Charlestown is really impressive and takes a lot of dedication to complete. It also took dedication to create, and we have the Friends volunteer group to thank for that. So who are the Friends? Here's Jill.
The Friends are a group that's committed to improving our park through service activities and financial contributions. We would love to have more members, but what that gets for you is the naturalist, Jeremy, schedules private hikes to areas that are off the beaten path and not accessible to the general public. So like there's a couple of cool graveyards. The ammunition plant, they donated some land, so there's a hike that goes there. And the good thing is the state of Indiana, if you volunteer 40 hours in a calendar year, the state of Indiana provides you with a free park pass for the next year.
If you've been on the fence about joining a friends group or helping volunteer at a park, you've got several compelling reasons right there. Aside from the challenge, the friends group maintains the native gardens in the park, is restoring Trail 4, and making other trail improvements.
One of the things that we're really proud of is a lot of the markers that you see, the Carsonite markers on the trails. The friends group purchased those with our donations.
Another event everyone I interviewed brought up is the big Halloween weekend.
That's our biggest weekend every year. We estimate about 3,000 people come through our campground. So anybody in the local community, you can bring your kids in to trick or treat our campground. Campers go crazy and spend thousands of dollars on decorations to make their sites really amazing. And then we do other programs and events around that weekend as well. We do a murder hike, which is a short hike back to an old home site and tell the story of the family who lived there. And unfortunately, their son was murdered in the late 1800s, which, you know, when I say that, it usually kind of eases people's mind a little bit. I think they freak out when you say there was a murder on the trail, but, you know, it was over 100 years ago. We tell that story. And it's not like embellishment. I don't have people hiding to scare you or anything like that. It's just a true story because, you know, the facts are gruesome enough. And then on the Sunday, we actually hike to a cemetery that's in the park where that individual is buried, so we can pay our respects.
The Friends Group can always use volunteers on that weekend to decorate campsites or help with parking and costume judging. Another big event that happens every St. Patrick's Day weekend is Bring in the Green. Mayor Treva started this long before she even considered running for mayor. One day on a run, she discovered a pretty big issue.
Trail 6 there runs down by the river, so you go up onto the hillside. It's great. You can look out over into Kentucky, and then you kind of come down, and then for a while, the trail just runs right along the side of the river basin. We have a lot of years where we have pretty significant spring flooding events, especially if we have a heavy snow. And anytime that happens, there's a lot of debris that washes down the river, and it kind of settles as the water recedes from that flood basin. And that particular year, the entire lower part of that trail was covered by debris, to the point where you couldn't even go on the trail.
Treva reached out to the park staff to volunteer her time. She asked them kind of a no-brainer.
If I organize a cleanup of this, you know, will that be okay? I don't know if they thought I was serious or not.
That year, about 30 people joined her. By the following year, 75 people showed up, and they removed even more trash that gets washed in from the river. This year will be their 9th cleanup event, and it's becoming a really cool community occasion.
It just kind of brings people together. We have sponsors. Court Physical Therapy here in town has sponsored breakfasts for the workers the past couple of years. They're doing it again this year. And we always do it the weekend of St. Patrick's weekend because I call it the Bring in the Green event. We're getting the park ready for springtime visitors, so come help us clean. And one year we didn't do trash pickup because there really wasn't any flooding, so instead we did invasive removal.
This year's Bring in the Green is Saturday, March 15th from 9 to noon. You can find information about the event in the show notes. If you're interested in helping the Friends Group, Jill said this is the perfect time.
I feel like the board right now is super motivated, task-oriented, and we get something in front of us, get a hold of it, and get it done. That's the great part about this group.
What they do need is someone with good fundraising skills, because one of their big goals is to raise enough money for a fire pit.
Right now we have a big grand idea of building a fire pit over in the Trail 2 area. This fire pit would be open to everybody, and we wanted to make it ADA accessible so that anyone can use it at any time for education, or if you just want to come hang out with your family but you're not camping, there's nowhere in the park to do that. And we wanted to, build a nice native garden around it, and that's our big dream right now.
If you want to be part of the Friends of Charlestown, there are links in the show notes. Aside from helping the park and the perks you get, remember why volunteering matters so much.
Us volunteers are the ones that make the difference for the years to come at these parks. Definitely Charlestown, because that's the one, I support the most, but all of them. So no matter where you live, being a volunteer in a park makes a big difference. Whether you see it right then or not, long term, it's helping.
It's your community, and it's great when you can contribute to the upkeep and betterment of part of your community.
And finally, Falling in love with this park now is perfect because Jake, the property manager, shared some of the future plans with me, and it's really exciting.
Now we have future trails that we have planned. We're just trying to seek funding right now to get those trails built. One's pretty expensive because we want to put a paved multi-purpose trail, similar to what you saw at Prophetstown. That would be about 6.5 miles of trail down by the river, and 6 miles or so would actually be ADA accessible.
That'd be awesome.
I know we paved, but it's pretty expensive to do that. So we're not there yet, but we have some of that stuff in the works so that when the funding is there, we can build that stuff. So we're looking to add trails still to this property. We've still got 1,500 acres or so that's restricted to the public. That's old military houses, old storage facilities for when they made the powder here. So there's still a lot of development happening. That brings a lot of neat vibes to the area. I mean, you can look behind you. That is our master plan right there. And we only have, I want to say, a quarter, an eighth of it completed.
So I'm not sharing everything I saw on that master plan because 1, I'm not sure I'm allowed to, and 2, I'll get some people so excited they'll be wanting it all right now. And this is a long-term plan, so you're going to need to be patient. But the good news is
there's a lot of room for development, and what we're trying to do now is we're trying to get stuff cleaned up from the military. We're finding a lot of invasives here.
Yeah, the waterfront probably changes a lot of what invasives look like here too.
Every time it floods, you have all that seed bank come. So if you haven't gone down the river lately, we got 2 areas by the overlook under contract, and they're getting treated, and we're going to have wildflowers planted next year. So we're trying to clean some of that stuff up. But if you look out, even out my office window, you can see nothing but invasives.
Even with all those challenges, Jake is taking the long view, and visitors need to be patient, but know that there is absolutely a grand plan being unfolded.
You're not going to see drastic changes. You're not going to see 300 or 400 acres all of a sudden change. We have to get a lot of the areas prepped before the big stuff can happen. Resource management is such a huge part of what we do. People aren't going to see the beauty and the importance of maybe funding a building or working on something here until we get the landscape under control.
What's awesome is that for anyone who's spent time at Charlestown, it's easy to see the beauty and appeal of the place. And that should get you excited for what this park is now and what it will become in the future. I asked Treva, Tracy, and Jill to describe what this park means to them.
I would love for people to know that here in southern Indiana, it's this little unknown town where we have this beautiful respite available in the form of the state park where they can walk a trail, sit by a creek, and watch a waterfall and kind of catch their breath.
First thing came to my mind is peaceful. It's a very peaceful park. The second is the rocks. It is the rock formation. So if you're a rock girl like me, the rocks are amazing. It's beautiful. I know that's like just a very generic word, but it is beautiful out there.
It's a treasure. We are so lucky to have it. I think it might get overlooked. There's so many popular places around here. And if you like to hike, this is the park to go to.
I think it's truly just a magical place of remembrance, and I'm glad that it's preserved.
Put Charlestown on your must-visit list and discover why it's been the perfect, peaceful hiking spot for people for centuries. I know you'll enjoy it and be so thankful for the time you spent in the park. As always, a big thanks goes to the Charlestown staff and volunteers who shared their time and knowledge with me. Thank you Jake Shapley and Jeremy Bevan from the park, Treva Hodges, mayor of the wonderful city of Charlestown, and Tracy Popp and Jill Duvall from the Friends of Charlestown State Park. In the Parks is not officially associated with Indiana DNR, but I'm grateful for all the incredible work they do for our parks. Please share this podcast with your friends and give it a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. You can follow along on Instagram and Facebook at In the Parks Online for more state parks content and my recommendations for the best places to get ice cream near each park. In Charlestown, there's a cute ice cream and coffee shop called Charlestown Coffee and Cream that will get you the sugar and caffeine energy you need. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in the parks.